Hi, it's Christy. Just wanted to show you something I recently learned about my soil in my new garden, new to me garden, that is. So when we moved to this house last summer, in July, and I was excited about this house because it already had 6 large raised beds, and these grow structures for putting shade cloth or netting or frost cover over your plants. But I didn't know anything about the soil here. I had no idea how long anyone had been gardening here, if they'd ever, what kind of soil they started with in the first place, if they ever amended the soil, how many seasons they grew in it before adding something or nothing at all. I just had no clue what I was working with. So here is a close-up of some soil I dug out of the beds. See if we can focus here. What I noticed right off the bat is it's very sandy. I've never worked with sandy soil before, which can be a very good thing when you're growing carrots or potatoes. So I was sort of excited about that. But another thing I noticed was when I would go to water the beds, it was hydrophobic, meaning the water wouldn't soak in. And that was troubling right off the bat. So the first summer that I was here, I looked into cover crops because I knew I wanted to add some, there was a lot of sand, so I knew I wanted to add some more organic matter to the soil. And so I ended up growing buckwheat as a cover crop on most of the beds. And then the idea is that you let it grow, and just before it goes to seed, or it starts flowering, and that's when you cut it off and you just let it stay on the beds, and then you can mix it in. And that adds organic matter and nutrients to your soil. So I did that just as a first step, so I felt like I was doing something at least. I still didn't know really what I was working with, but I thought, that wasn't going to hurt anything, so I did it. And then fast forward to later in the season, we were getting ready my husband wanted to set up his garden, which is more of an in-ground garden with some rows of compost or soil on the top. I knew that I wanted to top off my raised beds with more soil. So we went ahead and ordered some bulk growing mix from a local nursery, which we still have a giant pile of in the corner of my garden. So far I've only added that to one of my beds where I have broccoli growing, and things are doing okay. But I still didn't really know anything about my soil. And then a few weeks ago, I was watching Acre Homestead, Becky's channel here on YouTube, and she had a mail order soil testing kit that I'd never heard of. I mean, I knew you could buy those little kits in the store where you put a little sample in these little containers of your own soil and you add some water and whatever. I've never actually used one of those. I was a little intimidated by it, so I had one. I just kind of let it sit there. And now I don't even know where it is, but this soil kit that Becky was talking about, you just take a sample of your soil, and you want to dig a sample from 6 different spots in your garden, and you mix it up together, and then the kit comes with this little cup that filled with a liquid, like water or something, and you put your soil, they have a little scoop, you put that amount of soil in the cup, give it a little mix, seal it up, and then mail it straight to the company. And within a week, probably less than a week, I had my results back I tested the raised bed soil that was already there first. And this is what they gave me. All right, it might be a little hard to see in this light, but the important thing, they give you a graph showing all of the important nutrients that your soil should have. And if it's in the low end, the optimal, or the high end. And these first 3, right here, you see N is nitrogen. And as you can see, I barely even have a trace of nitrogen, it looks like, in my soil, according to this test. That was interesting to find out and a little troubling. And then the next one is phosphorus. And that's a good nutrient, especially if you're growing potatoes or root vegetables. You want phosphorus. So I was happy that, I have on the high end of that. And the next one is potassium, and I'm in the optimal range for that. So that was all good. And then there's some other micronutrients, which I'm not going to get into on this video, but the important ones for now are the NPK. Those represent numbers that you'll see whenever you go to buy fertilizer. Oh, and another thing about this report though, it told me exactly, it gave me links, and they're actually Amazon links, where I could order if I wanted to go the organic route. It told me to order one kind of fertilizer, and if I wanted to go the synthetic route, to order another kind. And I happen to have both of those types already that I already had from the past. The organic version is blood meal. And you can see these three numbers you'll find on almost any fertilizer package represent nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. They're always in the same order. So the first number is always nitrogen. So this tells me that this fertilizer basically adds only nitrogen, and the 13 represents how much nitrogen it adds. And on the back of the package, it tells you how much to use for square footage and all of that. And then a synthetic route was this one that I had that I actually used on corn in the past. This is not organic, and you can see it has the same numbers again, the same order. Nitrogen is the 46 here, which is even higher. And this is, you got to be careful with this stuff because it can burn your plants if you're not, if it touches the leaves or if you use too much. So those were my two options to add to my current soil. And then let me just show you some other examples of fertilizers that I happen to have around. Let's see, Fox Farm Grow Big. There's those three numbers. This one's, more of an all-around with a little bit higher on the nitrogen. Then we have this one is an all-purpose granular fertilizer, and here's the numbers. This one's 444, which is definitely, that's why it's general purpose. It has a little bit of everything that you need for the three basic nutrients. And then we have a tomato and vegetable one, which has a lower nitrogen and higher on the other two. And that's because if you continue using too much nitrogen on your plants, like tomatoes, for example, you'll get like lush, beautiful, huge plants, but they're not going to fruit. And you'll find yourself wondering why. What's wrong with the plant? It looks great. Why am I not getting any flowers or tomatoes? And that's because you have too much nitrogen at that point. So the one with a lot of nitrogen is better for early in the season, at like the time of planting. But then later on, after your plants get going, especially if they're fruiting plants, you want to switch to something more like this one, which promotes blooming and root development. So right away after getting these results, I decided I need to do something. I already had one bed planted with broccoli, cilantro, and carrots. And so I used this blood meal that I bought recently. It's gross. It's kind of nasty. It's basically powdered dried blood. I'm not sure what animal it comes from, but it kind of smells gross, especially when you get it wet. But that's an organic way to add a nitrogen boost to your soil. So that's what I did on that bed so far. I haven't really done anything with the other ones yet. I'm kind of going to assess those and do them as I plant them. So I also mentioned that big pile of raised bed soil that we bought at the end of the season that was supposed to top off my beds. I was hoping it was going to resolve the hydrophobic issue I had with that soil. So that soil I decided to test as well. So I knew what I was starting with in the beds, but then I also would know what I was adding to it because I just didn't want this to be a huge mystery anymore. And here is that pile. So I just scooped this from the pile of raised bed bulk soil that we bought, and it looks identical. So the old soil also had some seashells in it. Explains the sand. So this is the stuff I already had. This is the stuff we bought new. It looks the same. It feels the same. I guess the people who lived here before us likely got soil from the exact same place when they filled those beds. I don't know. So I'm kind of working with the same thing as an amendment, basically. So right away I decided to do another test on the new pile of soil, so I knew what I was working with there. And those results, again, came back within a week. We have, again, very low on nitrogen. Not as bad as the first set, the test for the soil that was already in my beds, but not good at all. It's nowhere near the optimal range. The other two numbers are very high as well. Can't really do a side by side here, but they're very similar results. So I knew for sure now that I need nitrogen. But I definitely recommend this test kit. I'd never heard of it until I saw the video on Acre Homestead. It was really easy to do. You can order it on Amazon. I'm going to put a link down below if you want to see what kind of soil you're working with in your garden. Thanks for watching. See you next time.